Hi, welcome to WFP Reviews. This channel focuses on classic British productions, so if you like this content, please support the channel by subscribing and do comment below. This time, we look at the 1964 epic Zulu. We'll review the film, look at the history of the real events, and look at Michael Caine in his first major role. Zulu is an action film based on a real battle between British forces and the Zulu nation in 1879. The movie opens with a scan of dead on a battlefield. As Richard Burton tells us, the British Army suffered a major defeat against the Zulus at Isandlwana, losing about 1,200 men. Our movie looks at the dramatic aftermath as a Zulu force of over 4,000 attacks a small outpost at a missionary station called Rorke's Drift. The film was inspired by an article by historian John Preble called Slaughter in the Sun. Preble co-wrote the screenplay with American director Cy Enfield, producing a story that balanced the courage of the defenders with the bravery and tenacity of the Zulu regiments. Zulu stars Stanley Baker, Jack Hawkins, and Caine in his first major role. Baker, who also co-produced the film, plays Lieutenant John Shard of the Royal Engineers. Shard had been ordered to build a bridge near the mission, but took command of the garrison as senior officer when the Zulus attacked. Caine plays Lieutenant Gonville Bromhead, the officer in charge of the troops when Shard arrived. Director Enfield opens the movie with a slow burn. The focus is on the Zulu people, who are having a mass wedding ritual watched by their king, Cetshwayo, and Swedish missionary Otto Witt, who's played by Jack Hawkins. Suddenly, the ceremony is stopped by a runner telling of the great British defeat. Witt is shocked by this news and leaves with his daughter to see the man at his mission station. So, the first third of the film focuses on Shard and Bromhead learning of the coming attack and preparing defenses to meet it. They have about 140 soldiers, including some sick and wounded, and get the men to erect high walls of mealie bags and biscuit tins to defend themselves. To raise the dramatic stakes, the movie shows Witt getting drunk and raging at the men about impending doom. That was artistic license. In reality, Witt was a younger man, and he left the mission station to be with his wife and 3 younger children at their homestead some miles away. As well, the film implies that Shard could have retreated but chose to stay to obey orders. In reality, retreat wasn't an option. If the wounded had been placed in carts, the British could never outrun the swift-moving Zulus. Still, in the film version, Witt's presence and the ominous sounds of Zulus in the distance does a great job of ramping up the suspense. After all this build-up, the Zulu force, called an impi, finally arrives and begins to attack. Now the bulk of the film shifts to the very desperate battle. Filmed on location in Africa, the combat sequences are excellent, stirring, tragic, and rich with detail. The Zulus combine their traditional mass charges along with gunfire from the hills using their captured rifles. Meanwhile, Shard and Bromhead constantly shift their sparse troops to meet the latest threat. The fighting is especially heavy at the hospital in the mission. The melees go room to room under a burning roof. In the movie, the defenders also number a local Boer named Adendorf. He's a handy character as he explains how the Zulus fight, especially their famous encirclement tactics, and translate Zulu messages for the British. As well, the fighting is especially desperate as neither side will spare survivors. At this point, we have to address the issue that Zulu deals with a colonial war that could be difficult to watch for some viewers today. It's interesting that while both Baker and Enfield were both left of center politically, the colonial politics of the conflict were not examined. Instead, the filmmakers treat this as a war film that respects the fighting men of both sides. It's notable that when the film came under scrutiny in 2018, it was defended by a Zulu chief who served in Nelson Mandela's government. We do get the British soldiers asking why they must fight, but they are simply told, because we are here. A unique aspect of this movie is its effective use of Zulu singing and war chants. The singing of Zulu women opens the film and works to make the setting look authentic. Later, we see how war chants were used to both terrify the enemy and bolster the fighting frenzy of attackers. Strangely, this sequence was so powerful that Ridley Scott mixed the Zulu chants into the German tribe soundscape at the start of Gladiator. And the film's depiction of these rituals is fascinating. The movie's famous climax juxtaposes Zulu chants against the defenders singing Men of Harlech. And while this didn't historically happen, it does raise the climactic tension to a fever pitch. Zulu is a tremendous looking film, especially given its age. The film was shot mainly outdoors on location, using the widescreen 70mm process, and it still looks very vibrant today. Enfield and cinematographer Stephen Dade really emphasize the terrain and the hillsides in the film. This makes the setting very real and adds to the drama as Zulu regiments tower over the defenders in the valley below. The performances in Zulu are very good, although this isn't my favorite Jack Hawkins role. He has to play wit as a one-note panicker until he drives away in his carriage before the Zulu arrive. Stanley Baker is a powerful presence, and Caine seems to gain strength as the fighting goes on. Let's also mention the fine work of channel favorite Nigel Green as Color Sergeant Frank Bourne, whose leadership is a key in the defense. A poignant highlight of the film is Bourne reading the roll after the battle to see who has survived. Bourne was a real sergeant who received a Distinguished Conduct Medal for, quotes, cool and outstanding courage while commanding his men. In terms of historical accuracy, Zulu does quite well, but changes were made for dramatic effect. The Zulus did not launch a final attack at dawn, as in the film, but left after attacking well into the night. The Zulu regiments were exhausted by long marches. They had suffered high casualties in the fighting and had not eaten properly for some days. One big liberty the movie does take with real characters is a depiction of Henry Hook, a soldier who won the Victoria Cross. Hook is played by James Booth, and to spice things up, he's shown as a gruff malingerer who drinks before he turns hero. In fact, Hook was a model soldier in real life who received good conduct pay, and it's notable that his elderly daughters left the film's premiere early in disgust. Now, let's look at some historical notes of interest. The aftermath of fighting in these battles was brutal. The Zulus spared no British regulars or native allies after Isandlwana, and in revenge, the relief column arriving at Rorke's Drift killed hundreds of Zulu wounded. The Battle of Isandlwana was depicted in the 1979 feature Zulu Dawn, with a stellar cast including Peter O'Toole, Burt Lancaster, and Bob Hoskins. It's a strong historical film, although most film fans prefer the original Zulu. Perhaps in an effort to distract from the disaster of Isandlwana, 11 Victoria Crosses, England's highest military honor, were awarded to survivors of Rorke's Drift. And the Zulu campaigns came to a grim end 6 months after Rorke's Drift, when the British routed the Zulus at the royal capital of Ulundi. In making our film, the role of the Zulu chief was played by real-life Chief Mangosuthu Buthelezi, whose people were featured both in Zulu and Zulu Dawn. Finally, let's take a look at Michael Caine's place in a movie that started to make him famous. It's not a surprise that though Caine was fifth billed back in 1964, it's his picture that is always featured on posters and DVD boxes for the movie today. He was still a struggling actor in Zulu and is very self-effacing about the role in later interviews. Caine swears he only got his role because Enfield, born in Pennsylvania, was an American, as an English director would never have cast a Cockney as an upper-class officer. By the way, Caine earned about 1/8 the salary of Baker and Hawkins for his role, but that would soon change moving forward. Hi. I also have to mention John Barry's robust score. It's suitably intense and combines well with all the Zulu singing that makes this film very memorable. Also, years ago I got very interested in the Zulu Nation after seeing this film, and got the book The Rushing of the Spears by Donald Morris. It's still one of the definitive histories on this subject, and I really strongly recommend it today. Well, there's a lot of history and issues to discuss with this film, so I certainly look forward to your comments. And as always, thanks for watching, and do come back again soon to Waltz, Flicks, Picks.